Hello, in this video I'm going to be showing you one of the most accurate ways you can mount a scope on a rifle. That's actually by glass bedding the scope into the rings. The first video of this series we covered bedding the base of the receiver. That's the most accurate way you can do that. So now we're going to continue that and bed the scope into the rings and get the scope mounted. This is a method I've been using forever, for decades now, well over 30 years. And a lot of other gunsmiths, accuracy gunsmiths, know this method and use it. So it's just an effective method, but I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. Even if you're a hobbyist working at home, this is something you can do yourself. I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. The big thing is there's a lot of detail to it. I'll be covering that here, but don't forget the release agent. You don't want to glue your scope in the rings. Okay, one of the things I do have an online course on my website with this. I've got several online courses on my website that you can get, but I've got a lot more detail in that course, as well as some advanced stuff. Like how to account for windage when you try to mount a scope and the windage is off a ways. How to deal with that if you want to get get a scope set up for a rifle for long range shooting, extremely long range shooting. How to maximize that. So I got more things beyond that online course than what you'll be able to see here on YouTube. But anyway, follow along, like and subscribe, and let's get started. Thank you. Previously, I'd mounted the scope base on the receiver and bedded the base, got that all done. Now it's Loctited and torqued on, so the base is finished. Now it's ready to put the rings on. So I'm going to take the rings. When you put a set of rings on, slide them all the way forward in the slot before you tighten them up. I previously figured out which slot I had to go into and all that ahead of time. And I'm just going to approximate the torque right now. I'll torque them on permanently later on. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the rings, because I'm going to bed the scope into the rings. And even if you lap them, either way, I like to mark the rings so they always go back on the same way. If you ever take them apart, you can put it back together the exact same way you fitted everything. We're going to fit everything now with the bedding, or if you're going to lap the rings by that method. So my method, I've done this forever. On the left side of the front ring, put a little single punch mark. And on the left side of the rear ring, put a little double punch mark like that. Now I've done the same things ahead of time with the ring caps. See that? That way they always go back on the same way also. Ring caps aren't nearly as important as the base. The bases are fixed and solid to the gun itself. So those you really want to go, because the ring caps, they'll float. But still, it's just good to put it back exactly the same way you took it apart. So now I'm going to set the scope in the rings. And I've already done this ahead of time, but I run the tracking on the scope, run the windage back and forth, the elevation up and down, making sure I'm away from the end of the travel. If I am at the end of the travel or nearly at the end of the travel, you better account for that. Often you'll find up and down is easy to shim for that, real easy to fix that if that's off a ways. But windage, then you're much more of a problem that way. And people sometimes talk about the action, the screw holes drilled crooked, stuff like that. Well, that may be, but more often I think it's the bore or the bore of the barrel. Every barrel has some curvature to it, and so if the curve is off to the side, when the bullet or the bore at the end of the barrel is off to one side, that's the direction the bullet's going. So the scope has to be adjusted to aim to where the bullet's going. And back in the day with the old 1-inch scopes, like when I first started doing gunsmithing back in the 80s, man, I found that all the time. So you had all these windage adjustable rings and bases, and other ways of doing it is to shim the base, like shim the one. Let's say this is a one-piece base here, but if I had a two-piece base, I could shim underneath the right side of the rear base, the left side of the front base, and tip those rings at a slight angle, which will pull the scope with it. And now you lap it or bed the scope in a new position. Now the scope is pointing now toward where the barrel is actually going, where the bullets are going, so you get your windage back. elevation. It's simple to do that. And again, I shim it. You can shim the bases. You can put some 20 MOA bases on it if you want to go that route. It's very simple. I've done this forever, especially back when I used to own and operate the Iowa 1,000-yard club. We'd have guys come not have enough elevation in their scope to get to 1,000 yards, zero. So we just pop the scope out of the rings. I usually put one strip of like masking tape or electrical tape or something on the front ring just to give a little cushion there, and add 2, 3, 4 pieces of tape on the back. That would jack the back of the scope up. Now the scope's going to sit level to the target, so when I jacked up the back of the scope, in essence what I'm doing is I'm jacking the back of the gun down, which means the barrel is pointing farther up, which gives some more elevation. Now I can use the elevation knobs on the scope to get more elevation, and just like that, we had a 100-yard target sitting out there. We'd put some shims on, take it to the 100-yard target, got to bore sight it, take one shot, crank it over, and now you're real close to 100-yard zero. Now we can estimate how far, depending on what cartridge the guy's running, what bullet he's running, as to how far to go, and crank up that many minutes of elevation, and then take him out to the 1,000-yard range, and 1 or 2 shots and you're dialed in, so that worked out great. We've done that so many times back in the day of doing that, but that's just a simple way of doing that is to do that. You can leave though the tape in there or whatever you're using if you want to. Much better to actually glass bed the scope into the rings. That becomes a new positioning of the scope. Same way with the bases. No matter whether I shim the bases or like this, I just bed it underneath the bases, and I left a little bit more of a gap on the rear because there was some there. Let the epoxy harden up. Now that just set a little bit more, so I probably gained, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know how much elevation, MOA of elevation that I gained by doing that on the rear base, but irrespective. So now I got to put the scope in here. I've run the tracking on the scope, went back to where I wanted to be, into the center of the range, set 0 on my windage and elevation knobs. Now I can look through my scope at my bore sighter, at my collimator. See if I can turn this camera. You can kind of see what I'm talking about here. But I got this bore sighter here. This is just an old Bushnell bore sighter they call it. But it's one I've had for, I probably bought it in 1987 when I started in business. But the thing works great. So, but it's just got a grid on there. I'll try to maybe take a photo of the crosshair on the grid, kind of show you where it started, and then where I'm gonna set it back the same position. So now I can look on the grid and see where I want it. So now when I bed the scope, I'm gonna put the epoxy in, put the scope back down in there, and make sure the crosshair lines up back up the same way that it'll harden up in that position, and I'll be there. So this gun came in with a scope on it, so I marked where it was, because that's where he had it zeroed. It shot good for him right there. So I'm just going to put it back on the same marks before I send it back to him. So, but anyway, but that's what I'm doing. The other thing you can do is when you're putting the scope on, now I can shim the scope. There's clearance in the scope. It went in the rings. It'll have a little bit of play. Well, I can shim a little bit. In this particular case, I'm going to have to shim the back of the scope to the right to get the crosshairs, moved over a little bit farther on there to get me, to get to where my zero is that I'm looking for. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going in here. I'm going to put the epoxy in here. I'm going to scuff the rings up, put the epoxy in, put the scope in there. Make sure I don't forget the wax on the scope so I can get back out tomorrow. But then put the ring caps on, just gently draw everything into place. I'm not going to torque it down at all. I'm going to bring it down until it squeezes the excess epoxy out, till I can feel the scope screws bottom out and back them off just a little bit. So everything is laying there nice and relaxed. Not putting any stress into the scope. Stuff like that. It's completely relaxed, just the way it needs to be, and let it harden up. I'll clean all the excess epoxy up and let it harden up overnight, or it's Saturday now. I won't go back to work again on Monday, because I don't usually work on Sundays. But when I get back in, I'll clean it all up and pull it apart. If there's any cleanup to do once I do that, degrease the scope and the rings and put it right back together. So that's how I'm gonna mount this. So okay, now I've got to scuff the rings up themselves. the rings and the caps. He wanted this I better get this scope back over where it needs to be. For this camera, I mean. Okay, I've got he wanted this reticle leveler on here, this little level, so I'm going to bed that top on instead of this rear. I'm going to set that one aside then, the one that came with it. So be careful when you're scuffing this up that you stay in the ring itself. You don't come out there and get the edges white and shiny looking. That won't look nice. So. And this is just some 150 grit sandpaper that I'm using here. Just gotta scuff things up a little bit. Epoxy sticks pretty good anyway, but this just ensures that it sticks really well. So. Now you can lap these rings and stuff ahead of time. I used to do that a lot. No longer do that. The reason being is you're going to take all the coating off, all the black coating, either it's anodizing or whatever. You can do it. I've also taped them off and sandblasted them to get all the coating off. But this is such a super thin layer of epoxy that's on here, just a few thousandths thick at the most, so it's not much. And so whatever finish is on there, the surface on there is going to show through. So if you've lapped it with a lapping bar or something like that, you're going to have like some of the edges here, really contacting. And so yeah, if you lap through, you're going to cut some of the finish off somewhere, and it's really going to show. So if you got a fourth of it white or silver colored, whatever the base of the aluminum or steel, whatever the ring is, showing through, and the rest of it black with a coating on there, it looks horrible when you take the scope out. It'll actually function perfect, but it just doesn't look good. So it's just nice to, here I've lightly scratched and scuffed it up a little bit, and that's okay. So I used to lap them ahead of time all the time and thinking, well, maybe I get the sharp edges off, but that's not an issue because the epoxy fills everything. So once it cures, you won't have any issue at all. So nowadays I just kind of scuff everything up a little bit like this. The epoxy sticks good and it just looks nicer when it's apart. So that's the next thing. But before I do that, I'm going to go back to what I should have done a little bit ago. So I'm going to go back and put a little bit of a little drop of oil on here, on each one, or set the scope down in the rings. Just push it gently down and just flex it just a little bit. Pull it back out and see once where they're contacting. If you can see it or not here, this back one is hitting much harder on the front edge than it is on the rear. The same way with the front ring. I don't know if you can see that or not, but this one's not real far off now. It was a lot farther off before we bedded that base, because the base was being forced down, pulling the rings farther apart. So it's much better than what it was before, but it's not perfect yet. So we're going to make it as perfect as we can get it. I'm going to try a different method. I'll show you a different method. This is stuff that you can't get this anymore, but I'm just about out of it. But this is stuff's called inletting gold. There's inletting black, inletting gold. In fact, it's getting hardened up, it's hardening up and getting hard to even work with this stuff anymore. It's hardening up. But what I'm going to do, this really transfers. It's just a colored stuff that really transfers. I'm just going to put a little dab of it on the inside of the rings here. Try to do a real thin coat of it here. Now I'll lay the ring or the scope down in that, and that'll show much better than what the oil did. Okay, just kind of push it down, wiggle this a little bit, lift it back up and out. Because that shows much better than what the other did. The back one is not too bad. It's hitting much more on the one side than it is on the other. The front one's hitting mostly on the back of the ring, hardly at all on the front. In fact, you can even see there where it's pushed it out more. So it's a lot better than what it was yesterday before I bedded the base. But it's not perfect by any means. So when we glass bed the scope into the ring now, it's going to make it absolutely perfect. So I just showed you just an alternative way of doing things, a different way. You can use oil like I did before. You can use something that transfers like this. I imagine you can put oil with some sort of a dye in it or something. I haven't tried that yet, but something that it's a contrasting color, because black on black or oil on black, you don't see real well. You can kind of see what's wet and what's not, and it's harder to get an even finish. When I'm pouncing with a brush like this, it's a lot easier to get an even finish, and you can do the same thing with oil, but something with dye, something that transfers. It's got a lot of dye in it that transfers well. So anyway, just thought I'd talk about that. Now I'm going to clean this all up before we bed it in there. Lightly, I'm going to degrease it one more time, then lightly scuff it up again, then I'm ready to go. Okay. I'm going to put some kiwi shoe polish. I don't even get this stuff anymore. It's been a while. I looked at the store the other day and I couldn't find it, so I don't know if I discontinued it or what. But anyway, I want to make good and sure that I wax the scope good. I don't want to stick it together. That would not be good. Let that sit a minute and I'll do it again. I'm going to do the screws too while I'm at it. The screws should not get any epoxy on them, but just in case, I keep this patch just folded up in the can of shoe polish and just kind of just wax everything a little bit, just in case something gets in there. I'll get it a minute, then I'll do it again. I'm also going to take some wax and just on the parting joints here, between the top and bottom halves, I'm going to just put it on the flats right there, just a little bit. In case some epoxy flows up and in there, then it won't stick to that. But do the same thing with the ring caps. Just like that. All right, one more time with the wax on the scope. I like to get the finish of the wax going the same direction, because that will show through on the epoxy a lot of times. And I'm probably the only guy that ever looks at it, but it bugs me when I see a lot of an imperfect surface on the coating or on the surface of the wax or of the epoxy when it's done. So anyway, that's done. Now I'm going to get the epoxy out and mix that up, and I'm going to use the Brownells Acroglass gel again, just like I did before, just like I did for the base, And just mix a little bit of that and dye it black, put her on. No idea who started this glass bedding thing. I've done it for, oh man, 25 or 30 years probably. I've been involved in competitive shooting since the early 90s, and yeah, somewhere I suppose I heard about it somewhere, who knows, but I did it, and I think the first time I did it, of course, on a customer's gun and with a $2,000 or $3,000 scope, probably a Night Force or who knows what, but anyway, stuck it all together, and I didn't sleep very well that night. I knew I had plenty of wax on it, but I've never having done it before, I didn't know what was going to happen, and it came apart just fine. Been doing it ever since, so it works good. So same thing as before, just try to get about the same amount out here. That should be a great plenty. Grab another toothpick here and get about the same amount of the other part here. That looks pretty good. Again, this stuff is a one-to-one mix, which is nice to work with. So, but no matter what epoxy you use, just make sure you do it. And I normally like this. I just do it by volume, or by volume. You can do it by weight also, which is fine. Okay, and I get a little dye mixed in with it. And it's Brownell's. This Brownell's acroglass dye made for working with this stuff. I got way too much there. Okay, we'll get that all mixed in nicely. Turn it nice and black. Okay, I think we're sitting good now. Rub it pretty hard into the surface. I want to get a good, really good contact into the surface. So, and you don't need a huge amount in there, but you do. You want it. So I'm probably a 1/16 of an inch thick, something like that, but don't need to be that thick even. But anything excess is going to ooze out anyway, which is just clean off with a Q-tip when we're done. So, but you want to have enough in there too. So. Okay, I'm going to clean off, you'll see it here in a little bit, take Q-tips and clean off about the top 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch on the side. I mainly want to bed the bottom, and it's going to ooze up there anyway, but that keeps it from flowing up into the joints a little bit better. So I'm going to take some off ahead of time with the Q-tips. You'll see that here in a second. And you don't have to bore sight the scope now. We'll do that when we're all done. You want to get it pretty close to where you're going to have it mounted, but it don't have to be lined up perfect and don't have to be bore sighted or anything like that. Even the crosshairs don't have to be perfectly lined up. You want to get them close, but that's that'll all be taken care of tomorrow when they pull the thing apart and clean it up. All right, that's done. See it right there. I take about the first 1/4 inch or so way. Okay, everything looking good. Yep. Got the wax on the scope. Don't forget that. I can see the ring marks where it was mounted before in the other set of rings, so kind of line those back up. Set down into place just real gently. Push it down. Make sure the ring cap is on the correct direction. Put the marks, line the single mark up to the single mark on the base for the front and the double mark for the rear. This knob must be heavier than this side. It keeps wanting to rotate around, but that's all part of it. It's just sitting in that wet epoxy, so it's just free to move. Yeah, see the epoxy starting to ooze up and out now, so I'm going to get the other screws going here a second. Okay, get the back one going. Okay, now I have to push the rear of the scope to the right as I'm kind of drawing it down in. Not much, I'm just going to kind of hold a little pressure that way. Just lightly, I'm going to hold it there now. I'm going to finish going down with it now. Just going to very, very gently work my way down. Not put any pressure on it, still move it. Okay, now she's drawn into position. Now I'm just going to take the tension off of it now, just where it's still sitting there, but with just light pressure holding it, nothing else. Yeah, I can still move it a little bit, so. Yeah, looking perfect on the grid there, so. Yeah, so it's sitting right exactly where I want it. So now, my wastebasket over here. Go through lots of Q-tips. That's all right. That's all epoxy that's oozed out of there. So once I get as much off dry as what I can get, I'm going to put some vinegar in here and yeah, clean as much of it, or clean the rest of it off. That way I don't have to mess with it after it hardens up. Much better to get it off now while it's wet. Probably done 1,000 of these this way, or probably more than that. Never, ever any issues with having one stick. I always double check, make sure I got lock or release agent on it also. So be careful. All right, let's get a little vinegar out. Yeah, this is just white distilled vinegar. Got it at the grocery store. Just dip the tips of my Q-tip in there and I'm just gonna start rubbing. It'll dissolve any wet epoxy that's on here. So you just kind of go over everything. And once I get everything cleaned off, then I'm gonna dry everything off too with Q-tips and paper towels and stuff like that. I'm gonna look with a flashlight real carefully, make sure haven't missed anything, because that'll sometimes happen. And if you miss it, it's gonna harden up on you. It'll be a whole lot harder tomorrow to clean up, so let me tell you. Okay, now I'm gonna take some dry Q-tips and go over everything again. I've had guys ask me before if I worry about the vinegar getting into the parts. It doesn't. It just, at least I've never ever had it anyway that I've noticed it. So it just stays on the outside, and whatever epoxy's come up to the edges stays right there, and it just works really well. This is what I use for bedding for sure. Again, I don't trust acetone and brake clean and stuff like that with some stock finishes, but the vinegar seems to work really well with that. I've never had it affect a stock finish or paint or anything like that, so that's what I do when I'm bedding stocks. But it works really well for this also. A little shoe shining with a fresh paper towel just to make good sure I haven't missed anything here. No sign of epoxy on the paper towel, so that's all looking good. All right, we're just gonna let that sit and harden up. Normally let it sit a day or two, usually till the next day, but pull it apart and clean her up, and she's ready to go. So that's as much as we're going to do right now. Just leave everything sit just exactly like that. We've drawn it into position and just brought the ring caps down just enough where I felt the bottom out, take the tension off, so everything is laying there nice and relaxed. So any variations in the mount between the ring and the base, we'll fill with epoxy then. See, that way it'll match it. It matches it perfect, and just a great stress-free way of mounting scopes that works so well. An additional advantage of this, I remember this way back years ago, especially when I first started, was dealing with a terrible lot of hunting rifles. I mean, heavy recoiling magnums with real lightweight guns. I had a hard time, especially with a 1-inch ring, having a hard time holding them where the scope rings would slip and stuff like that. Man, this fits the scope so much better and really prevents it from slipping. You can also put some rosin in. and just some powdered rosin and put that in the rings and stuff like that. That'll really grip it. So that's just other things you can do when you're mounting scopes. But for now, this is going to work, and most cases this is all you need, just doing it like this. But it's a fantastic way of mounting scopes, and it fits perfect. But you have to have all the preparation done ahead of time. Again, you have to make sure the base is down, have that all correct. Make sure the rings are where they need to be. Slide them forward in their slots, tighten those down. Figure out on your tracking kind of where the scope, if you have to shim the scope, fine. Do it ahead of time. Prep all the stuff ahead of time, then put the epoxy in, put it all together. Make sure it's lined up where you want it to be, and then when it hardens up overnight, we'll pull it apart and clean it up, and it'll be perfect. Then that's just, and I've done, let's say, 1,000 or more of these things this way over the years, and this works so good. So anyway, we'll leave it for now and get back when we pull it apart later. Thanks. All right, I'm back, and this stuff should have cured completely. Yeah, the epoxy is on the cards hardened up, so we're good. I'll go ahead and pop the ring caps off and get the scope out of the mounts. And we'll hope it comes out. The ring or the screws are coming out real easy, and they should have anyway. They should probably won't have any epoxy on them, but just in case, I whacked them. Remember that or not? I whacked them just in case, and they should be just fine. Usually, you just can't pop the ring caps off by hand. Sometimes you can. We'll find out here. This one have a little bit more leverage because it's big. No, they won't come off that way. So I got to get the scope out of the mounts. Then. I got to get the scope out of the mounts, and then once I get that off there, I can pop the ring caps off that way. Now you got to be careful getting the scope out of the mounts. You don't want to grab the ocular end, the eyepiece here, because that's more of a joint. So you don't want to put, it takes a fair amount of pressure sometimes to get them popped off. Well, this is all solid up here, the whole front end. So that's what I'm going to be pulling on. I'm just going to kind of wedge my hands in between here, and I get my thumbs down on the barrel and my scope, or my hands around the scope, just put a little more pressure, just with a little leverage. I can normally just pop it right off. I've never, well, maybe I have, I don't remember it. I have to take a wedge. I got these nylon wedges. You can see this or not, but I've got the little nylon wedges. I can drive those in here or even up in here, and just tap on them lightly and put quite a bit of pressure on without damaging anything, and almost never have to do that. So let's go ahead and see if we can get them pop loose here. There we go. Now I gotta get the ring caps off. There's one, and there's the other. So now the scope is free. You grab a paper towel, kind of clean things off here a little bit. I'll degrease it better pretty quick, but I just want to get everything off. And sometimes you got a little bit of residue, little bits of the epoxy from the edges sticking on there, and just don't feel like that even has that. So we'll set the scope aside. Got the rings, the epoxy in the rings looks really good. Take a little bench knife here, kind of clean the edges off, if there's anything on the edges even. Usually just cleans right off real easy like that. And you see this top edge here, it mostly came up to the top edge, not quite all the way. Take a look at the front one here, and it pretty much did come all the way up to the top. And yeah, the sides are all pretty much about the same. And then the ring caps, there's the rear cap. You can see it or not. Get over here where it's kind of in focus. And the front cap. You can kind of see a little bit here where it came up and over the edge. You can see that or not there, but just the tiniest little bit there is also. So really, it's pretty straightforward as far as it goes. Just clean these things up, and I'm going to degrease the scope a little bit better, and put it right back together. I'm going to use a little bit of, you know, acetone and stuff doesn't seem to take this wax off very well, but mineral spirits does. I'll pull my little solvent drawer out here a minute. And just a little bit of mineral spirits. That's what I normally use for solvent for a lot of this stuff. So I can kind of just go over the scope with that a little bit. Get rid of the wax. Yeah, looks really good now. Guys, do the same thing with the epoxy on the rings and the ring caps, and then okay, I'm going to put my collimator back, my little bore sighter back into the barrel here, get the scope put right back in, and get the crosshairs lined up and snug him down. Get my marks oriented correctly so they're sitting the same way I bedded them. Gonna get the gaps about the same. I'm not gonna tighten anything up right now, just kind of get it roughed in kind of close, but still leaving it loose enough to, I want to be able to turn the thing a little bit yet. Okay, I can still rotate the scope a little bit. This is what I've used for decades now. This is the handiest little scope leveler. I can get it where you can see it in the camera or not here. But it's it's a simple little device. I think you can still get these. It's Segway Industries. Just a reticle leveler they call it, but I'm almost positive you can still get these. But it's just the handiest thing. I'm just gonna put the put the rubber band on it, pulls apart like this. Right underneath, I'm just going to put that crossbar on the scope mount, on the scope base where it sets level. So now I just line up the reticle level to that. I can look through here. I'll try to get a photo of it here pretty soon so I can add in so you can kind of see it. But I'm just going to look in here, and it's almost perfect already, actually. I don't think I can get any straighter than that. And I'm still lined up on the bore sighter exactly where it was, so that's all looking good. Now I'm just gonna start tightening this thing down. Go in a kind of a crosshatch pattern as I bring it down. I'll get my little torque wrench on it here pretty quick. We'll just get them kind of snugged down first and make sure the reticle stays lined up. It did. Yeah, that stayed lined up just perfect. So, my little torque wrench on here now. I'm going to bring it to about 15 inch-pounds. You can see zoom this around a little bit where you can kind of see what I'm doing with the torque wrench maybe. Okay, this is a little wheeler torque wrench. It just goes up in the scale. Run up about 10 or 11 first time around. I'll go to about 15, 14 or 15. There's a little beeper. I think I get it set about 15 or close to that. And you got to go around several times, just like I used to build and race drag cars, and torquing cylinder heads and stuff like that. You don't just go around at once. You go several different times. And tires on a car, you torque those on, and same thing. You don't do it all in one shot and be done. You do it several different times. Kind of work your way down there and try to keep it as even as you can. All right, there we go. Okay, the ring gaps look good. Since I got the gaps level, the crosshair may not be level to the base. I've not got the base itself leveled. That I've not checked, and this level, who knows how level that actually is. Looks like it's about the same amount, so. But that's something the shooter, if he's several things we can level off of. We've got the bottom of the stock here. He's got one of these wooden Gunworks plates on the bottom of his forearm, so you can set that level, and then he can turn loosen these ring caps and move the bubble level till it's the same. I just got it lined up basically with the scope base, so he can move it around if he wants to. That's not a big deal. Just get it on there. So now he's got if you're going to go do some real long range shooting, if he just uses this, he just set his rest where this thing's level every time, or however he does that anyway. So I'll double check the bore sight and stuff like that with the bore sighter in here. But it's done now and ready to go. So that's the main things I wanted to show on this now. So hopefully, find this useful, and it's just a great way to mount scopes. It's very, very solid. The whole gun is just solid and rigid now. There's no clearance anywhere. Everything's just, made it together very, very solidly. The scope, there's no stress in the scope itself, which I think is gonna, keep the potential down for any possible inaccuracies or any problems induced into the scope from that shouldn't be there. So I think it's going to be a very, very good deal. And I've just done so many of these over the years, and just works so well to do it this way. So anyway, I just thought I'd show you that, and very, very easy to do, and that's something you can do at home as well as in a shop. So don't be a bit afraid of trying it. Just don't forget the release agent. See you later.